I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about agritourism, growing farms, building communities, and saving the planet. That's what it's all about. My dad and I started a farm back in 2012, and we started as a market garden. So just a regular fruits and vegetables, diversified crops, taking it to the farmer's market in our community. We've been to several farmers markets actually, selling them there. And we would sometimes sell to restaurants. We would sometimes sell wholesale when we had a lot, but it was always very frustrating for me because we could never turn the corner and become profitable. Obviously, if you're going to be a business, you want to make sure that you are making money, but we could just never turn the corner into making money. And we were doing as much as we could. We were working really hard. We were just a two-person team, just me and my dad. And it came to the point in 2016 or so where I was like, something just has to change because I can't keep doing this. I came across an article back then that made a pretty big splash in the small market farming community. It was in Salon, and it was this article, but nobody told me about small farming. I can't make a living. So the lady who wrote this article really talked about the good, bad, and the ugly, and how at her farm, she could also not make a living in California. And she started to talk to other farmers in her community. She's like, surely I can't be the only one, but nobody talks about this. So she said, okay, there's three criteria for what I consider making a living. And that is that the farmer has no outside job, only farms, that the farmer does not rely on any free family or volunteer labor, and that the farmer makes at least minimum wage. And she didn't find a single farmer that met all three. And actually, less than a year later, she sold her farm as well. So what exactly are farmers making? So this is from USDA Census. The median income of farm households by income source and farm type. So you look at that light blue, that's income from farming. Look at the kind of tealy color. It's 3 shades of blue. I don't know why. That's income from off-farm sources. And then that dark blue is the total household income. So the farms are categorized along the bottom there on that x-axis as small, meaning that they gross, less than $350,000. That means they sell less than $350,000 of stuff annually. Mid-size and large scale. Most farms are small, okay? By the numbers, there are more small farms than anything else. I don't know if you can see it. It's negative. Small farms are losing money, are losing income from farming. It is costing small farms money to farm. Crazy. And it lined up exactly with my experience, so it kind of stopped me cold. This is me and my dad. This is back when we started. We did, like I said, what everybody else was kind of doing at the time, which was bootstrapping, figuring that we would invest in the business with whatever revenue that we had. But our revenue was so small, it just never materialized for us to be able to build buildings. We didn't do, actually to this day, we don't have any of that, but I'll get into that later. And it's not because we weren't growing really nice stuff. And it's not because we weren't growing what the market wanted. But there's really, I think, 2 reasons why we could never turn the corner. The first is 2 people is just not sufficient labor to move enough food through the workflow of growing food to actually make a living wage from it. Because the final product, we're talking fruits and vegetables, right? This is not expensive stuff. This is stuff that's $1, $2, $3, $4, $6, $7 a pound, right? On the high end. It's just not expensive stuff. So the workflow of growing food to getting paid on the left here is you have to grow food, right? Your next step is you have to harvest it. Then you need to prep it, by which I mean bunch it, bag it, cull it, sort it, everything you need to do to get it ready for the market. You need to store it somewhere. Then you need to market it. You need to find buyers. You need to get it to them, right? And then you get paid. That's how you get paid for growing food, okay? On a small farm, if you think about a factory, okay? At Toyota, it's not one person who is putting the tire on, putting the hubcap on, putting the door on, putting the window in. You know, it doesn't work like that. one person specializes. You have one person who's putting windows in all day long, right? That's how you get efficiencies of scale. And if you're talking about a small farm where you have 2 employees, you're touching every single piece of the process. And you can't have efficiency like that. There are some farms that, like, when you reach a certain size, like I know farms that are 7, 8, 9, 10 kind of people, where you do gain these efficiencies where somebody's just picking all day, right? And they hand it off to somebody who's just washing all day, right? But 2 people cannot process enough food to make enough food at the end of that for it to really add up to much money. And the second reason is that the available avenues of sale for me did not work. And I'm primarily talking about farmers markets, but also CSAs and wholesale. Farmers markets. I love farmers markets. I really do. But they really do not work for small local farmers. And most market gardeners rely on direct-to-consumer transactions for like 75% of their revenue. So we need to get retail, basically, in places like the farmers market. Farmers markets are only open for 4 hours once a week. That's a very limited availability to the customer, right? You're open one time for a few hours, and that's the only chance that people get to buy from you all week. That's tough. You're also completely Ooh, there was a little echo there. Let's see. Sounds okay now? You're also completely dependent on the weather. If it rains, people just aren't going to come, and you're going to have all of your stuff, and you're going to have to take it all home and figure out what to do with it. It's also a lot of competition at the farmers market. Farmers markets are full of farmers who have the same stuff on their tables. There's a lot of choice, right? The bottom line, there are many other reasons, but really there just are not enough shoppers. There's so many different ways to get food now. Like I can order food on my phone and have it at my door in an hour, right? It's much harder if you're just thinking like a bunch of carrots to a bunch of carrots. There's one bunch of carrots that I can order in 2 clicks on my phone, or I can remember to get up in my jammies on Saturday morning and go to the farmer's market and fight the crowd or whatever and get my bunch of carrots. A lot of people are going to pick the first way to get a bunch of carrots. CSAs, if you don't know, that's community supported agriculture. These are the kinds of things where you get a box of mixed produce, so maybe 6 or 7 different kinds of produce that the farm has grown, and you get it delivered or you pick it up. It's a tremendous amount of labor. So it's just adding labor to the labor of the growing and the harvesting and the prepping. And now people want them delivered. It's just very, very, very labor intensive. Wholesale, you kind of have the other problem where you're getting such a low rate. Because if you're wholesaling, meaning you're selling to a restaurant who is then turning around and selling food, prepared food to the people who come in to eat, right? Or you sell to a distributor. I did that a few times. So they sell to the restaurant. So it's kind of one more step before that. And they all have to also make money, right? So that cuts into the amount that they're willing to pay you. So I already wasn't making money. I wasn't excited to make even less money by having to sell it at a discount. This is some of my blackberry fields from way back in the day. We really liked the aspect of the farmer's market that was talking to customers, okay? And a lot of times customers would say, can I come out? I want to see your farm. I want to bring my kids. And, sometimes we would do it when we had time. And then one year we were like, something has to change. We have to produce more food because we have to make more money. If we're going to be able to keep doing this, we have to find a way to make more money. So blackberries are well suited for our area, relatively low maintenance in that the maintenance takes place kind of off season from the annuals. So they fit in well. And we said, let's try it out. So we planted a field of about 800 and we said, we will open those as pick your own. Because we had heard about pick your own berry places. You've heard of pick your own like apples and strawberries and that kind of stuff, right? So we said we'll be blackberry and we're close to town. So that first year that we opened the pick your own blackberries, we said we'll continue taking all of the rest of the stuff, which is, tomatoes and peppers and onions and that kind of stuff. We'll keep taking that stuff to market and we'll invite people out to pick the berries. And the first people that arrived said, when are the tomatoes ready? When do we get to pick those? When do we get to pick the onions? When do we get to, the demand to pick everything took us by surprise. I had no idea that people were going to be so excited to pick everything. So we kind of said, okay, well, let's see if we can figure that out, because I really didn't know the growing techniques of how to do that. So we spent the winter thinking it over, figuring out how we were going to do it, and we have built on it ever since. And so now the two of us, it's still just me and my dad, are growing as much as we can really handle, probably a little bit too much. So what is Pick Your Own? I've done a bunch of operational talks before. I go in depth in my book through, it's a really practical guide, step by step, of what to do if you want to have a Pick Your Own like ours. We run about an 8-week season. That's mid-May through mid-July. That's all that I'm open to the public. And that's long when you think about a Pick Your Own, like a strawberry Pick Your Own is open for 3 weeks tops, right? So we have a good long season with the diversity. What we do is we grow as wide a variety as possible, as profitable, in-demand crops that are ready in that 8-week window. I don't want them ready before. I don't want them ready after. People will pick from as much as you offer them to pick while they're there. So you want to have as much as possible ready in that window. We host what we call pickers. Those are the guests who come out to see us 3 to 5 days a week. We open more days when we have a ton of stuff of the crops that are ready, and we'll open fewer days when things are taking a while to grow. We do all of our picks are 3-hour time slots, and we divide them, or they're 3-hour-long picks, I should say, and they're divided into 1-hour time slots so people can pick when they want to arrive. And because this is Texas and it's 1,000,000 degrees most of the time, we usually start at 8 a.m. So that'll be an 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11. We sell tickets in advance, and I really recommend this. We use just a booking app to do that, and there's a bunch of different ones on the market. We target the right number of people for the right number of produce ready, okay? Because there's nothing worse than people coming out to your Pick Your Own and finding nothing to pick. So that's kind of something that's gained from experience, but as long as you're always conservative, sell fewer tickets than you think you may be able to sell, you should be okay. We charge all the produce is by the pound, market price. So whatever the prices are at the farmer's market, more or less, what my local market will bear. As far as marketing, our main marketing is social media. And so that is Instagram, Facebook, got TikTok now. Just really simple social media, nothing complicated. And word of mouth. I mean, most of the people who come to see us say they have found us through someone else, a friend of theirs. And it's important to remember that the tourism is just as important as the agri and the agritourism, okay? Hospitality is a big deal because people don't want to come out to see you and have a bad time, regardless of how nice the produce is. Like if the farmers are jerks or it's really disorganized or, it's really messy, it's not going to be a great time. And you want people to come back, right? You want them to have a good time and come back. So you have to really keep one finger on the tourism aspect of it all. There's one of my awesome little pickers on the right. And that is basically what my schedule looks like on the left. So May, June, and July, kind of May 20th or so, and then we'll go as far into July as we can keep the quality high. Obviously, by the end of July, or mid-July, I should say, it's easily over 100 degrees. It's very hard to keep the produce quality high. And it just frankly is dangerous for people who are used to being in air conditioning all day. It's different for me and Dad because we're out in the heat every day. But when it starts getting dicey out there and we don't feel good about having people in the heat, that is when we close for the year. That's it for the year. So I only spend about half of a year farming. And these are the crops that I grow, right? Carrots, beets, onions, garlic, blackberries, cucumbers, bells, hots, squash, cherry tomatoes, sunflowers, and cantaloupes, muskmelons. Actually, I'm doing more than sunflowers this year. I'm learning from a bunch of you pig flower farmers and really trying to up my flower game. Why does this work? First of all, it works so well that we are making between 3 and 4 times as much money as our best farmers market year. That's an average pick your own year. And I don't think we have hit the potential of it yet because we are still learning how to grow stuff is hard. And it's a sort of a constant thing. You're always learning more. And every season is different. You're going to have this year, for example, it rained a foot at the end of May. And it wreaked havoc on a lot of stuff. You've got to be able to anticipate and pivot, react to that kind of stuff. And it'll be something different every year. So that's fun. But why does it work? This is that workflow we talked about. If you want to get paid to grow food. And pick your own eliminates all the steps in the middle. So we no longer have to harvest, prep, store, market. And those are long steps. Okay, it's a massive amount of work. What we have done with the time that we've saved, not doing the steps in the middle anymore, is that we grow much, much more. So I grow about triple the number of plants that I did when I was growing for markets. And that's the bottom line. Like that is, if your revenue comes from a product that you're selling, you got to make more product. And this is the way that we're able to spend so much more time on the plants. So I can grow so many more plants that are making so much more food because I don't have to worry about harvesting, prepping, marketing, and all that stuff. People come to me and they get it. There are a lot of other wins than the profitability, although the profitability for me is thing number one because farmers have to be profitable to be able to do it. We can't ask farmers to farm for charity. It's not right. It's a business. But they actually, Pick Your Own solved all kinds of problems. All the problems, in fact, that we used to face at the farmers market. So like, we set our own hours, right? If it rains, I'm going to be open tomorrow. That's fine. I'll cancel today and be open tomorrow. You cannot do that at the farmers market. They won't do that. All of our produce is sold at the peak of quality. I don't have to worry about it sitting around in coolers and stuff. There's obviously no competition because they're at my farm. There's no one else to buy a pepper from at my farm than me. And we manage every aspect of the business, you know. The main thing is that there's enough demand. Enough people are willing and excited about doing this, which is great. Thank goodness. But Pick Your Own has also been very physically relieving for Dad and I. We produce some like 25 to 40,000 pounds of food every summer, and I don't think that 40 is the upper limit either. I think we can do better than that. If I had not been selling it through Pick Your Own, I would have to pick up and set down that 40,000 pounds easily 10 times before it was sold. It's just a lot of wear and tear on your body to be a farmer. And Pick Your Own and having the actual weight of the harvest come out in little bits and baskets by everybody else has been very, very physically good for Dad and I. It also saves a lot of time. Like I mentioned on the last slide, we only farm for half the year. So we really we'll have to do little bits through the winter, prune the blackberries, plant the onions, plant the garlic kind of stuff. But really, I'm only full-time farming from about the beginning of March through July. And then I get to do other things. So this is well suited for if you have a skill like you consult, or you are a grant writer, or you're a barista, you know, anything that you can do part-time the rest of the year and do your farming stuff when it's farm season. I think there's a sort of a misconception, I think, that you have to be a full-time farmer to be a real farmer. And like, I just don't agree. I make much more money farming this way than I ever did as a full-time farmer. So I think we should open our minds a little bit is what I'm saying. It's very emotionally rewarding. I love this little kid with his pepper. We get hugged on the legs by little kids every day. I love seeing the families come back and see us every year, and it'll be a pregnant belly, and then it's a baby, and then it's a toddler and a pregnant belly again. You know, we have just really gotten to know these people who come out and see us over the last 7 years, and you get thanked every day for your hard work and like maybe I'm a sucker for it, but it feels really good when you work really hard at something and it's something that you know you are doing that is fundamentally good for the world. It's very, very rewarding. And of course, younger generations and the planet benefit, right? We need to expose children to what real food is, what is healthy, even just expanding their tastes, right? How to grow plants, that it is important to eat from plants and take care of the environment. All of this stuff is like, we're just planting seeds, right, in their brains that like, hey, I went to a farm when I was a kid. I had a really good time. That was fun. Is there another farm we can go to? Or, you know, you keep those memories. Every year I talk to people who are like, oh my God, my kid is asking me every week when you're going to open again for the season. And I'm like, here's a bunch of my little kid pickers that people have sent to me. So obviously these are the most important people that we see, in my opinion. And it is, of course, not just the kids that this is really impactful for, but it's really impactful for the adults as well. So we're going to veer into marketing just a little bit here. When people talk about, when marketing people, I should say, are analyzing consumer behavior, one of the things that they look at are the consumer's motivations. And what that means is, why does somebody choose to purchase this thing instead of that thing, okay? So a motivation is a desired outcome that a consumer has. And on the next slide, we're going to talk about values. And values are the kind of metrics by which people decide if they have reached the motivation that they wanted. So I wanted to find out what it was that was making people want to come out and pick your own with us, because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, right? You need to plan an outing, usually with your family, drive anywhere up to, it turns out 30 miles is the average that people are coming out to see us. We're very close to Dallas-Fort Worth, so we're only about 20 miles north of Dallas-Fort Worth. But it's not the easiest way to get food, right? So what are they looking for? And I sent out a survey to my customers, and I gave them the choices, and it said select all that applied. You can see that number one choice, the number one answer rather, was supporting local agriculture and personal interactions with the farmer is the most important thing that people are looking for when they come out to my farm. And I just found that so heartening and exciting. It's honestly not what I expected. And the best thing about that is that is free for me to provide, right? That costs me nothing. People are so starved for access and personal relationships with people who grow their food. And the market is there for that, is what I'm trying to say. But the other choices were super fresh produce, spending time outside, doing something fun, organic produce, and so on. And I want to draw your attention to the two at the bottom. Low prices and convenience are not motivations. They are not important to the people who come out to see me. Let's talk about the values. So the values are, what do you like about Pure Land Farm? These are the things that people say. For example, this top one, the produce is organic and good quality, was the number one value. They measure whether they have supported local agriculture and built a personal relationship with the farmer based on the produce being organic and good quality. So that's really important information for me, that I have to keep my produce quality above almost everything else. I have to make sure that produce is really, really high quality, because people expect it when they're buying from a local farmer. They also value that it's a fun thing to do, spending time outside in nature. They also value getting to know us, and so on. Hard to read. I put this slide together. It's just a snippet of a bunch of reviews of my farm. And I did this not to brag, but just to show you what the public response is like to an agritourism experience. This is not the kind of passionate response. This is a fraction, okay? I have hundreds of these. This is not the response you get as a farm that sells at the farmer's market. I don't think I ever had somebody go online and write a review about me when I sold at the farmer's market. But I get these these just passionate, happy, thrilling for me reviews every single day with the Pick Your Own. And I think that you provoke this kind of response by sharing this sensory, immersive, fun experience with people. There's a lot of humanity in this, right? Feeding yourself from the earth is a very base instinct, like lizard brain instinct in people, okay? Sharing these experiences outside with people really has a great power to move people and to touch people very deeply. So, if you will, bear with me to go into the big picture a little bit, I think this is actually how we save the planet, okay? I was at a conference a couple years ago, and I heard a session by a man named Andre Liu, and he is the president of Regeneration International, and his presentation really connected a lot of the dots for me and led me to this next section. 2023 was the hottest year on record. And I have never talked to a farmer on any end of the political spectrum that does not think that the weather is changing, okay? The weather has changed in the 12 years I have been farming. I can't imagine how much it has changed to someone who's been farming for 50 years. The main cause, not the only cause, but the main cause is this buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So sunlight comes in and it gets trapped in these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, etc. But let's focus on the carbon dioxide here. This carbon dioxide buildup is coming because of two main sources, that is burning of fossil fuels and changes in land use, aka deforestation. And that's for development, that's for any number of things, trees, that we're cutting down to use for all kinds of stuff. Even small increases in temperature like this can have catastrophic consequences, okay? Increasingly severe weather, already seeing that. Droughts lead to famines, heat waves, bleached coral, rising seas are causing migration crises. Like, it's bad, bad. And it's not even enough at this point to just stop producing CO2. Like, even if we moved to complete alternative energy tomorrow, climate change would progress because we have to actually remove the built up CO2 in the atmosphere. We have to actually draw it down. Good news! We actually know how to do it. So, hopefully you are familiar with the equation on the left here. That is photosynthesis. Plants in carbon dioxide, right? That's just in the atmosphere all around us. They take in water, and then they take in that solar energy through their leaves, through the chloroplasts, those cells on their leaves, and they actually convert it all into glucose and oxygen. That oxygen floats up away, and the plant uses that glucose in a bunch of ways. One way is that they use it to build more tissue. That's what plants use to build more plant, right? They also exude some of those simple sugars and carbohydrates through the roots in the form of root exudates that feed the soil microbiome. So by the end of this life cycle, what does the plant do? It dies, falls back down to the ground where it rots and decomposes. All of that carbon in the glucose, you see that C6 that was used to build the plant tissue, is free in the ground again. This is carbon sequestration. A big word, big phrase that you will hear. This is all it is. It's plants taking carbon dioxide out of the air and sticking it into the ground where it belongs. So this is an active area of research, but there's a lot of evidence that suggests we can draw down all of the excess CO2 in the atmosphere and actually reverse climate change. This was the crux of Andre Liu's presentation. Through this natural biological process of carbon sequestration in our agriculture systems, because agriculture is the biggest land use on the planet. So let's talk about what regenerative agriculture is. And you're going to hear different words. Regenerative is kind of the new one on the scene right now. I know you've heard of sustainable, you've heard organic. Regenerative is kind of the one that we're on right now. You got regenerative farm on the left and a degenerative farm on the right. Practices in use by the farm on the right, which is large-scale industrial conventional farming, these are major contributors to the climate crisis, okay? Excessive tillage, that is literally whipping the carbon right back out of the soil into the atmosphere. Use of toxic pesticides, use of synthetic water-soluble fertilizers, herbicides, all of that is degenerative and leads to a decreased soil health. Plants sequester carbon on all farms. So there had been carbon sequestered on that farm on the right, but the excessive tillage released all that carbon right back up. We want that carbon to stay in the soil, like the regenerative farm on the left, and that is by using different cultivation practices, okay? Low or no till. I till once. I till lightly. I do it one time a year. That's what my context allows me to do. And then I very aggressively try to reestablish my biology using a bunch of techniques. But that's the kind of clay soil that I have. You have to kind of go with what works in your context. Cover cropping, that's using crops that actually fix nitrogen through a bacteria on their roots into the soil. Helps with your soil health. Here, we're going to go right back into it right here. These are the 5 tenets of regenerative agriculture. Keep your soil covered. Bare soil is just going to bake and die. Maintain living roots year-round. You want the microbiome, that is the bacteria and the fungus that lives in the dirt, to have something to live on. If they don't have living roots, they're going to die as well, and you'll have dead soil. Integrate livestock. This I don't do. I would if I could. We just do not have animals, and we don't want animals. We try to mimic what the animals do. So what the animals do is disturb the surface of the soil just enough, and of course they poop, right? And so all that kind of, the manure is rich in carbon and microbes for the soil. So we try to mimic that by applying microbes and stuff. Maximize crop diversity. Monocultures like these fields of 800,000 acres of wheat are just begging for a disease to come and wipe them out. Diversity by having, we have, I think, 13 different crops, allows you to handle risk much better. And minimize the soil disturbance. Like I said, we don't want to till when we don't have to. We don't want to disturb all those microbes and these soil aggregates with the organic matter in there. We want them to stay. They're making happy little ecosystems underground that want to work themselves out and work together and be a healthy place. When you disturb them, you're just like starting back from ground zero. They're trying to build back up. So, to preserve life on Earth, we have to repair our degraded soils, restore the environment, not only stop, but we have to actually reverse climate change. And to do that, we have to remove this buildup of CO2 in the atmosphere. How can we do it? With regenerative farming practices, right? Regenerative practices that sequester carbon, that suck it right out of the air and stick it in the soil where it belongs. But the Earth is pretty big. We need a whole lot of farms to do this work. And I think the most generous number I've ever seen for regenerative versus degenerative farms is like 5%. There's only 5% of us who are really growing regeneratively. We need to convince the other 95% to transition to regenerative practices to do this. So how are we going to get other people to farm regeneratively? Oh yes, here are all the people that are supporting the farm. How are we going to get other farmers to farm regeneratively? We have to make it profitable. And for me, that's where Pick Your Own comes in. What we have left is all of the consumers who are demanding, because with Pick Your Own, imagine that we have 500 happy little Pick Your Own farms, and each of them has a rabid little base of customers. Every one of those knows a little bit more about regenerative food, knows that they like local, knows that they like knowing their farmer. Every single one of these people is a little bit more aware of what's going on and is a little more like, well, I don't want degeneratively produced food. I want regeneratively produced food. Consumer demand is what will actually cause the system to change, because it's not going to be easy. It's not as simple as saying, well, that 800,000 acre corn farm should be farming regeneratively. Okay, go do it now. This is a large scale industrial agriculture, they say, is a big boat, and big boats turn very slowly, right? So we have to put all of these kinds of support systems in place for large scale industrial agriculture to be able to make the transitions to regenerative. They're going to need a whole lot of support. And that's by that I mean like government policies and grants and like the whole big picture to actually incentivize people to make the transition to regenerative, because it's going to be expensive and it's going to be hard. But imagine what we could do with this much consumer demand that was built up by a whole bunch of people who started to learn more about where their food came from because of the little pick your own agritourism farm that they used to visit when they were a kid, right? Imagine if all these people knew the issues, knew who their representatives were, made their voices heard, and demanded better quality food. We have the solution right in front of us. It's plants to do the work of drawing down that carbon, and it's reconnecting humankind with agriculture and our soil and growing food. And the change starts with us, right? It starts with you. For me, the very first thing, I couldn't have kept doing this if I hadn't found a way to be able to pay my bills doing it. So that is why I share my story, and I would like other people to get into Pick Your Own, because it has really changed my life and enabled me to continue farming. And in the bigger picture, really enabled me to, I think, build this. We have something like anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 people that come see me every summer. That's 5,000 to 10,000 people who think a little harder about where their food comes from. You know, that's a big deal. And the more of us doing this work, the better. So, there's my book. There's me and my dad on the cover of Acres. Acres published our book last winter. And I would love to hear from you if you have questions. It's Megan at Pure Land Organic. Thanks so much.